What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Cold Email podcast. Today, I'm joined by two of the most respected names in the cold email space, Nick Konstantinidis and Troy Aitken, the co-founders of Buzzlead. Nick, Troy, welcome. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having
Good
us.
pronunciation on the last name, too. I appreciate that.
Of course. So just for some context, Nick and Troy run one of the most successful cold email agencies out there. They've sent millions of cold emails on behalf of their clients and also for themselves. Now, I've personally had the opportunity to work with them directly, so I can tell you firsthand, these guys know what they're talking about, and they're also actively running campaigns every single day at the highest level. So on this episode, we're just going to talk about how the cold email space has changed and evolved over the past year or so, why some businesses are getting really good results and why other businesses are struggling, the most common mistakes agencies and B2B businesses are making, the effect of AI on the industry, and also what you need to be doing to make cold email work in 2026. Now, before we jump into everything, could you guys just both give everyone watching a quick intro around who you are and what you do specifically at Buzzlead?
Yeah, so Nick and I have been running Buzzlead since about August of 2022. And we typically work with SaaS and creative agencies that are predominantly rely on referrals or word of mouth to grow their business. Works out pretty well for growing for a certain bit. And then they try to do different things that ultimately just don't pan out well when it ends up being like the go-to-market strategy. So they end up between a rock and a hard place and just start hitting a glass ceiling. And so what we inevitably end up doing for them is building in a really systematic lead flow into their business. Cold email is that predominant channel, and we bolt on other flows like LinkedIn and cold calling, stuff like that. But it's been really successful for our clients. They typically see around a 5x to 10x ROI within the 4 to 6 month time frame.
Yeah, and so Troy had kind of given a good intro about Buzzlead, but I'm the other founder at Buzzlead, and just in terms of like how we kind of divvy up responsibilities. I mean, we're both wearing multiple hats within the organization, but Troy leads a lot of our sales and marketing, copywriting, and really just the overall like marketing scheme of things side of things. And then I'm more so on the operations, list building, a lot of the technical aspects of lead generation and what we do that goes on in the background, and then a lot of client fulfillment as well. But really we both got our hands in. So
yeah, and I think because you guys are each sort of specializing in different parts of the business and the process, I think that's why it's going to be so valuable to have both of you here, because you can each sort of share your own perspective on the thing that you also specialize at the most. Now, you guys have been running cold email campaigns every single day for years now across dozens of clients, and also for different industries and different market conditions, because you guys have been doing this for a while and the cold email space has changed quite a bit. So based on what you're seeing right now, how effective is cold email today as a way to generate leads compared to, let's say, 1 or 2 years ago? And do you feel that it's working better, worse, or does it just depend on the business?
I'd say it just, the barrier to entry has just gotten higher because the competition now is just a lot steeper in who you're engaging with. And so previously there's just been little small windows of cold email where people have just been really easy to just like spin up some accounts and like spam volume. But then these ESPs come out with new blockers like Google requiring like the DMARC and DK and SPF and all that sort of stuff. Like that was a huge wave of people dropping off. And then you have Outlook coming out with different things. And then you have the rise of AI. And so it's just gotten harder and harder, which has just made the competition get better and better. And so cold email it's definitely not as easy as it used to be, but it's still as effective as ever because you're still hitting these people right in their inbox and the place that they do business. And we do LinkedIn as well, and we do cold calling. We've seen those perform a little bit less as effective as before, but we just love cold email as a channel just because it's where people do business and you can speak directly to their pain points and desires.
yeah, and just to piggyback off what Troy had said, like I really think that the overall thing that's changed the most is just the market has gotten way more sophisticated. They are used to receiving more emails than ever. They get spammed each and every single day. And so they are, I guess, not as likely to just give anybody the time of the day. And I think with things being a little bit more challenging, you have the challenging components as it relates to spec. Like I think it's a lot more, you have to be a lot more tech sophisticated and do a lot more steps in between the process to make sure that your campaigns and your emails are actually being seen, not just landing in spam. And then aside from that, like I just think the market is also just more aware of all the different types of businesses, and everybody is online, so they know what services exist out there. And so in order to really stand out, like, you need to truly show that you've done your homework, you understand that business, you understand the pain points that they are facing in order to even just get any sort of visibility response. And so I think we just need to be more strategic overall, but it's absolutely more effective than I think it's ever been. I mean, we've been doing this for a lot longer, and I know we are a little bit biased, but it's by far our number one acquisition channel for new clients in comparison to all the other marketing strategies we're doing: ads, customer referrals, LinkedIn content, all those things. Like cold email definitely blows it away, but we also spend a lot more time doing.
And one of the things that I think Nick was like moving around on is just like relevance. And that's where I think a lot of people are going to struggle with cold email now, is the old ways of doing it, of just like going to Zoom Info and sourcing a lead list and then firing that into outreach or into sales loft and then running a sequence of just like static emails. That time has just come and gone. And the people that are really succeeding now are just incredibly relevant in their outreach. And then you always hear lead with value, but don't just lead with value that's like some contextual, like non-contextual thing that you just built just to do it and build it. That's not going to be of value to them. It's like lead with something of innate value that's based on a trigger event that you saw like going on within their business, exactly how you can help out. And that's where you just separate the wheat from the chaff, really.
And do you think that the fact that the barrier to entry is higher and the fact that it is sort of getting harder to see results, do you think that's a good thing for the businesses that actually know how to run cold email campaigns? Because obviously that's wiping out the large majority of companies that are not doing it properly. So do you think, as an agency who is doing it properly, and you guys are obviously adapting and adjusting to everything that's going on, do you think that affects the good guys positively?
Yeah, I mean, I won't even speak from anecdotal evidence. I'll just speak from what we're seeing occur in the marketplace. Is like the rise of the go-to-market engineer, replacing SDR teams of 10 to 12 people, but having similar magnitude of impact at like a fifth of the price. And then you have Sam Altman going and speaking the other day around how there's going to be the rise of AI agencies and how they're going to be a ton more scalable, like an exponential curve, because they're going to be able to do just magnitudes of force more than what previous agencies had to do, because you're able to replicate it with AI really quicker and sell it at 100x price point compared to having like a typical linear trajectory of just being like, we got a new customer where we have to add a new headcount. It's just like, cool, we just spin up a new AI agent to go and deliver on this priority. And so that's where it's just like, we have first movers advantage now. Not to say that other people can't come in and catch up, because there's a ton of resources that exist out there enabling you to do so. You just got to want it.
Yeah. I think Troy hit it nail on the head here. It's like definitely a steeper learning curve to be able to like run a campaign successfully and actually get that dopamine effect and of seeing that you got results here. But I really do think the people that can figure it out are just going to run absolute laps on everybody. And cold email, why I find it to be the best channel for any business to run, is because it really could not give you a better foundation for running marketing across all different social media channels, because you're essentially going after the pitch perfect dream customers that you want. So it's very targeted in that sense. You're getting their contact data, like you know who the person is, you're getting their LinkedIn profile, you're getting their email address, phone number. If you have all those different data points, and then you have the correct tools for the rest of your marketing funnel all connected, then it really allows you to become multi-channel. And just with how Troy was mentioning with agents just being all connected, like you could literally have the smallest team and have all of your different marketing channels hitting on one head, and it all stems from cold email kind of being the function root. So yeah, I think it's a exciting time, very exciting time. And I just think that the opportunities are endless for people who could crack that code.
And obviously we're mentioning that cold email is becoming harder and the barrier to entry is also becoming higher. So Troy sort of touched on this before when he mentioned a couple of like technical things in the sense that it's become harder with all the deliverability practices and all these ESPs and all that stuff. So what do you think has actually changed the most that has led to it becoming harder? When you look at your own process even, what have you guys had to change the most over the business and over the cold email campaign process in order to keep it working and to continue seeing results?
I think we're just doing we're paying a lot more attention just to like our infrastructure itself, and like just making sure that it's set up correctly. And so what I mean by that is like there's a lot of technical steps that go into building out email accounts and then being able to run campaigns. And we just have a lot tighter of systems, making sure that we're not letting other spammers or people, I guess, like affect our chances of being able to deliver the inbox. So we're doing technical steps such as like using our own private IPs. We're using a private sequencer for physically delivering the messages. And then we're also just paying a whole lot more attention to like not include spam words inside of our copywriting. And we're also running inbox placement tests, and we're monitoring our reply rates on any given day, checking for blacklists. These are all things that we never used to do, but now we have systems in place to just do that automatically and notify us if something is wrong. So we're taking all those steps to just make sure that we're staying ahead of the gun. And then we're also not putting all of our eggs in one basket. And if you just go and set up all Google accounts or Microsoft accounts, it might work for a couple of weeks, but you really need to have a diversified approach, because what we've learned is that there's always going to be some new spam update or policy around deliverability that's going to affect your chance to, deliver solid campaigns. So we're just way more on top of
that. That was like a deliverability masterclass in like 30 seconds, which is just like incredible. But like, there's just so many like small little minutiae aspects that go into infrastructure. And the reason that we're harping on infrastructure right now in terms of just like the competitive advantage, that's the key thing. If you can end up in the inbox, you can solve that initial problem, you're going to be in really good shape, because then your next thing is like, all right, cool. You can go and you can source lead lists and make this hyper targeted and then triple verify them to make sure those are accurate. Like Clay is great at that sort of thing. And then the next thing is just like personalization. But if you can't solve that first thing of infrastructure, then you're just dead in the water before you even start.
So do you think that throughout 2025, there has been what some people call a deliverability crisis? Like, do you think that all these new deliverability strategies and practices, for example, removing spam words and running spam placement tests, have these all actually become a necessity? Or is it just that, people are panicking for no reason?
There's definitely a ton of FUD in the marketplace that Nick and I talk around and we're like, this is just BS, because we just look at our stats and we can see it pretty clearly as what's going on there. But that just come with time of just in the trenches at late nights, sitting at 2 a.m. We're looking at our email accounts. We're analyzing bounce rates and reply rates to figure out what's going on. What kind of bounces are we getting? So now we understand like what is actually relevant and not. And something like what Nick just mentioned, those are the best practices that you need to be putting into place right now. He might have skipped maybe like a couple of things, but if you do 90% of those things right, you're going to be in really good shape.
Yeah, agreed with that. And like, as funny as it sounds, like something that we heard all the time when we first started our business is just like, if you pay attention to the fundamentals and the basics and you build a good targeted list and you're sending a relevant message to the right person, that all of your deliverability problems are going to go away. And we kind of push that to the side. And as Troy had mentioned, there's a lot of FUD, just fear that we see from people claiming that they just can't get results from cold email anymore. And the more that we feed into that, the more it affects our ability to perform. And we start going down these rabbit holes that in reality are not needed to be gone under. We simply just need to get back to the basics and just like make sure we're spending good time building a targeted list, qualifying or verifying the emails, making sure they're all valid, and then just making sure that they're being delivered to the right people and that the message that we're sending to those people is relevant. People don't get pissed off from an email if it's something that is relevant to them. They'll politely just say that they're not interested. People get pissed off when they're just receiving a bunch of garbage that has no business being in their mailbox. And it's just funny when you actually kind of take that for truth, you realize that your reply rates are way higher and you're not having nearly as many issues with your infrastructure. And all of a sudden, deliverability crisis is just a myth to an extent.
The market tells all at the end of the day. And so if your customers, your prospective customers are in your inbox chewing you out, there's something that you're doing wrong there, from the targeting and the messaging, the way that you're speaking to them, and just be willing and being like receptive to that. Like it's not going to, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And so just be like careful in your approaches that you're trying to align here. You'll be a lot more successful. And to Nick's point, simple is what scales. And we do sweet workflows for our customers where we're doing things like scraping and RSS feeds and automated workflows and Trigify and all that cool stuff. But at the end of the day, you can set up some really killer campaigns just by doing ICP-based targeting and doing some research on them, identify the trigger event, and then just personalizing outreach off of it. It doesn't need to be that complicated as long as you're reaching out to the right people and at the right time.
I just want to touch on one of the things that you guys mentioned, which is that there's a lot of garbage in people's inboxes. And do you feel like that's affecting the prospect in the sense that, do you feel like there's more resistance or you actually need to do more work in order to get attention in the inbox now because of all the garbage? Do you feel like there is more resistance in the inbox? And if so, like, how does one actually penetrate through that resistance and generate interest now that, there's a lot of people who just don't want to be receiving these emails? How are you guys actually seeing success with it?
It's a good question, because we have inbox managers that sit on the front lines and they give me the feedback. And one of the biggest things, they give me like a weekly feedback report of what they see in the inboxes every single day. And so the reason being is, like, when we started out the business, I got to manage the inboxes and I got to see all the positive things that people said about emails and a lot of the negative things. But now I'm a little bit detached from that now that we have a bigger customer portfolio. But that said, it just comes back to being just freaking relevant. Because if you just like know what's going on in their world and you can speak to it, like you just saw their new their new gym location open up and you wanted to reach out to them for 15 free t-shirts that they can run for their launch event, like that is so incredibly relevant. And then on the flip side of that coin, there's also a lead magnet there. Like you're also giving innate value to them in the form of either time, value, or resources that they previously didn't have. And if you can do like one of those things well, you're gonna be in really good shape. If you can do both of those things well, you're gonna be rich forever. And so like it's just one of those things. If you can be relevant, you're gonna stand out incredibly well.
Yeah. And naturally, I mean, I do think that other people that are sending garbage emails per se, like, sure, it does affect kind of like the bigger pot of like opportunities, in the sense that a lot of people become closed-minded to being open to being solicited over email. However, as much as we try to make everything as targeted as possible and like make these lists perfect, it is a volume game at the same time as well. Like there's certain things we can control, and that's how good our emails are and how well they might be received to the person that we're sending them to. Certain things are out of our control with what Microsoft and Google are going to do, and that's kind of the domino effect that happens from all of the bad players that are out there in the market. But at the end of the day, if we're sending volume and we are getting creative with our angles and we're getting some sort of message that people actually want to see and something that's at their top of their mind always, it negates that any sort of issue that we have with like people being closed-minded to cold email or other bad garbage players, ruining the pot for everybody.
I mean, it goes to the old adage that volume negates luck in this space. And I totally believe that it's true. It's like once you find that winning angle, and typically our judgment is like, if you can hit 200 to 300 contacts and you get like, you're finding that like that angle is winning, you can scale that really heavily. And that's when we'll send most massive volume. But we won't just load up a campaign out of the gates with 20 to 30,000 contacts, write the script one time and expect it to rip. You got to do multiple different iterations when you start out. And so like when a customer comes on board with us, typically we're doing like 3 to 5 initial campaigns in month 1. And then month 2, we're adding on like another like 3 to 6. And we're just going to consistently stack these things. And then once over the course of time, it's just A/B marketing testing. And that's where we're able to just like scale really effectively. So at the end of it, you have a really good output of like message market fit. And as a byproduct of that, just me using the calendar.
Yeah, so that sort of touches on the next question that I wanted to ask, which is there a strategic way to scale volume? Because you mentioned that obviously you don't want to go and just email 20,000 people right off the bat when you don't know if the offer or if the script has been sort of validated. So do you guys have a structured approach when it comes to scaling volume, that you initially start off with a smaller batch and then you scale that if you reach sort of certain KPIs?
Yeah, so typically like if we're onboarding a client for the first time, and that's a great question because like a lot of times people will just burn through their whole market or send way too many emails when they haven't gotten that message market fit right out of the gates. And so typically when we bring on a new client, some of them will know exactly who their ideal customer is, and they have like that dialed down to the T. In those cases, we'll map out the whole market and figure out how big is this total population. And the reason we do that is because we want to be able to like know how often and how frequent we're going to be able to like reach out to these people on a given year and know when the next time we're going to reach back out to them is going to be. In cases where people are trying to figure out their ideal customer profile, or maybe they have a couple of different verticals that they can go after, then we're not going to map out the whole market, but we're just going to see and run campaigns across all of those different verticals that we want to test against, figure out which ones are the winning ones, and then once we've identified the winning audiences that we want to go after. We'll map out the market, and then we'll do micro split testing within that market to figure out how we can like find the best message market fit once that's dialed in. But going back to the case where like figuring out what we want to do before we scale volume, let's just say we have one vertical. We know this is our true vertical. We will maybe test out 4 to 12 different frameworks of ways that we're positioning it, maybe different pain points or triggers that we're looking for, different ways that we're positioning the service itself, like for the copywriting and the scripts or the call to actions. And we'll run a couple of 100 to maybe 1,000 leads across all those different split tests, and then essentially take a look at the analytics, the KPIs, figure out what the winning angles are, what the losing angles are. We reduce the losing angles, and then we just double down on a smaller split tested, I guess like subject matters, like campaigns. We'll have a smaller batch to split test across, and then we just do true testing on a smaller batch, and we kind of just fine tune the process that way, where it's like smaller batch of different campaigns and frameworks that we want to test against. Find the winning angle, then we scale into it.
I think the simple version of it is test small, bet big. We really like working with early stage brands in some cases because we just have some killer case studies where they're like, I don't know who I'm selling it to or how I'm going to sell it. And Nick and I and our go-to-market team, we sit down and we just jam, and we're like, we could package up this way and sell it to this person. We could package up this way and sell it to this person. And so like a recent Series A company that just came on with us, we just like we have like 7 different angles that we're about to run for them when this campaign launches on Monday, and I'm just amped. But those data sets are only like 800 to 1,000 people. And so our feedback loop is going to be really tight on those because the campaign's not going to have a lot of time. Now, to answer your direct question around scaling, we view scaling in like 2 different aspects. So there's market scaling, where it's like, hey, you have an audience, want to test out. It's working out well. Great. If not, kill it. The other one is just timing scaling. So you have a certain trigger event that occurs. Let's say you sell franchise services. So one of the flows that we've set up is going out and scraping automatically layoffs at FYI. And so every new business that comes in there that's having layoffs, we're reaching out to VP level and above contacts. And that is always going to be going on. Another like common flow that you hear floating around on social media is utilizing tools like Trigify. So people are often just commenting and talking around like new things. And that's something that like once you find the winning angle, there's always going to be new interjections of content coming into that. And so you just have both of those things just like consistently filling up. So you can add more contacts to your main audiences that are just like ICP based targeting, but then you have those timing based signals. And if both of those just start kicking, then the campaigns just run on autopilot pretty much until they don't, and you got to do something new. But for the time being, they typically do, and you have a lot of fun with it.
So, yeah, super like structured way of going about scaling volume. Now, when you guys are signing on a new client, or when you're analyzing what makes a business a good fit for cold outbound, are there any prerequisites that they need to meet aside from your own preferences? Like for a company to be a good fit for cold email, is there anything that you guys specifically look for?
They gotta have a good website at the very least. That people that like speaks to their. They gotta have a website, and they have a website that's like actually marketing branded and not like feature driven. That's just the immediate thing that comes to my mind. I'm sure there's a few other things, Nick, that you can think of.
Yeah, and I mean the website is huge, and the reason being is we're driving all of these people that we're emailing directly to the website. So if somebody has a website that you can't really tell what they do within a few seconds of visiting their website, that's an automatic like turn off right away. But then another big thing that we've just realized now with experience is that with cold email, you do need to have some sort of intro offer, some sort of product, service, or offer that's easy for people to get their foot in the door and say yes to. And so if we're working with organizations that sell something like t-shirts or promotional products, like those are pretty easy, where it's like people could always be looking to go and purchase something. And we could also create that urgency by creating some of these workflows where maybe we know they have a conference coming up that they're going to want to be passing out promotional items. Like you could create urgency with a lot of those things, similar to with offers like lead generation services. Everybody is always going to need leads. And if you have a make more money offer, it's pretty easy to provide a convincing email script or a message to make people want to make more money or reduce some sort of pain that they're in. But then there's other offers that are more like enterprise grade, where it's like a lot of these can be relationship driven. So think, for example, maybe it's like management company that has gotten all of their business for 20 years through just referrals and word of mouth. And in order for them to get a customer to pay them $1 million to manage an event, there's got to be a lot of trust that's built there. And so working with offers like that, where it's like more of a long-term solution, cold email could be very tricky. And unless you have some foot in the door, like intro offer, something that for them to say yes to on the front end, it's hard to get any sort of traction. And so you need to come up with some sort of lead magnet or hook or some sort of incentive to just get these people to even open up to having that conversation. And so I would just suggest to some businesses that have a very technical, sophisticated offer, like you need to have some sort of entry level taste of that offer that people could say yes to get them hooked on before you could just go and try to sell a $multi-$100,000 solution. I'd say those are kind of the big things that I'd look for, I guess.
Yeah, totally. You just got to get your foot in the door so then you could upsell the opportunity. And I do think that's where a lot of other businesses struggle because they're like, I haven't closed a 150K opportunity in 3 months. And you're like, what have you tried to sell? And it's like, well, only 150K opportunities. When you found other opportunities to position like 5K, 10K pilots, just do evaluations or pilots and stuff like that. And then you just get your foot in the door, you upsell, and then you crush it from there. One of the things that Nick mentioned that I think is really important, and I want you to expand on this, Nick, is a make more money offer. Like, what do you mean by that? Because I'm sure a lot of the people that are like listening to this are trying to get into cold email or doing it now. What is a make more money offer? And can you give an example of it?
Yeah. So like a make more money offer is essentially something that people are always out in the market for, where essentially like the reasons why people will make a decision in business is typically because they're either trying to make more money, make their life better, or and to make their life better, that's like removing some sort of pain or something that takes up, time out of their day. And so with a make more money offer, it could really just be anything that you're able to position in a way that like you could tie an offer to it in the sense that you could make a claim or a promise that you're able to help people make more money in a certain time frame, and that you have some sort of tangible results that they can expect to receive out of your service. Whereas if you don't have a make more money offer, like people aren't really actively looking for your solution all the time. They know that it could be a problem, but it's not something that people typically they don't go out to the market and actively seek that. If they do, they'll go searching or looking for like referral partners and they'll sign on with them. One example could be like SEO. It's like everybody knows that SEO exists, everybody should be doing SEO, but when you look at the impact that SEO is going to have on their bottom line, it's hard to say SEO caused their business to increase our revenue by $50,000. Whereas with lead generation services, you're able to tie that back to the opportunities that were generated from the cold emails that we're sending, and they could close a certain amount of deals within that time frame. And so that's kind of just two different types of offers. Web design, it's another thing where it's just like people aren't really actively just looking for a freelancer or somebody to go out and build them a new website. And so like in order to grab these people's attention, you need to point out some sort of problem. You need to make them problem aware and then try to turn that into some sort of make more money offer. Like, not sure if you're aware that your shopping cart is taking 5 seconds to load, and that's probably leading to you guys losing, based off your website traffic, that's probably losing you guys an extra 20 grand that you could be making. Mind if I send a video over to show you how we can fix that? So it's almost like taking people who have no awareness that a problem exists, like they know that it's SEO is like something that goes on in business, but they don't realize the impact of them not fixing this problem. So you need to make them problem aware.
I think a few things that you didn't even know that you did there is like you made it contextual to the business, personalized there. So it's like this aspect of your like specific website itself is causing this downstream impact, and like it's personalized. It would only make sense if it went to Alexan. It wouldn't make sense if it went to Nick, right? And then the second thing you did is like you lead with something of innate value. So you're going to show them how to fix the problem. And that doesn't work in every use case, but one of the best places, if you're just getting started out with cold email, is work with things like Claude or GPT and be like, hey, this is what I'm trying to sell. How can I creatively position this to help people make more money? And it'll help you spin up a few ideas. And some of them will be good. Some of them will be bad. That's just the nature of it. And then you just iterate and you just test. And then you just listen to what the market says. And then if you can help people make more money, you'll make money. And it's a whole lot more fun for everyone involved.
So obviously, first of all, have an intro offer, have some sort of a front end offer that you can generate demand for. And then also have that credibility around your cold email campaigns with the website and all that stuff. So one of those things that I guess businesses should have around their cold email campaigns could also be case studies or a social media presence. Do you think that with all the skepticism that's sort of happening right now in the cold email space with the prospects, do you think that all of these external components are also becoming more important as factors of a cold email campaign, like having case studies, social media presence, and all these things?
Yeah, especially if you're an early stage brand or an agency. And if you just don't exist online, you're going to just be greeted with skepticism. And so one of the best things and best pieces of advice that we got from people that started out earlier on was to get customer videos that are testimonials, like video testimonials. So then you can send it over to them, and people, I guess you can fabricate those now with AI if you're really good at that. And you should probably pursue that path if that's what you want to do, because it's hard. Not saying you should, it's ethical. But that said, yeah, if you have that like content and you can throw that out to people, right? You say like the statement in a cold email and they're like, tell me more. And you actually send along the video. That's going to be a really more compelling. And then also content is a great fallback. So they can go and search your name, and the first thing that they're going to find is your LinkedIn profile or your YouTube or your X, right? Like these are all things that are going to help tell the story itself. And so absolutely critical if you're getting started out, like that'll remove a lot of uncertainty from your buyer's experience.
Yeah, 100% critical. And I remember when we first got started and we didn't have much social proof. Our website was garbage. We didn't have any videos showing any of the claims that we actually did are true. And so like we would have people respond and they're just like, hey, you know, I saw your email was interesting, but I didn't see that you have anything on your website with so an X, Y, Z. And so essentially like, you know, the more social proof you have, the more credibility is built within seconds of people visiting your website. And then just as it relates to social media, like people can't deny the proof if they are able to go and look you up online and see a trail of years and years of you just producing content, posting results, putting your face on camera. Like those are things that are inevitably like true. You can't just erase them from the internet. And so like I think it's an absolute must. And especially if you're driving people to your website, that's the best thing you could do for your business, is just make it so that people visit your website, they know exactly what you do in as little time as needed, and they could also see that what you're claiming to do with your product or service can be backed up by, you know, results and clients that you've actually done that work for.
Both of those things just build up an undeniable stack of evidence that you can actually deliver on the things that you say you can do. And one of the pieces of advice that I wish I got on earlier is like when I was working, we were building Buzzlead, like I was running a W-2 at the same time, and as was Nick. Nick was like, I got to get out of this W-2 though, and I'm committed to getting out of escaping this journey. And so I was just posting on his profile and doing content, and we got to see Nick's profile grow really quickly. It grew to like 2,000 followers, just solely posting content on X. And then I see Nick getting these inbound opportunities from sales opportunities. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, what is this about? I'm like, this is like content that I'm posting. And Nick is like reaping the rewards, which is great because it was a win-win here, right? Symbiotic relationship. But I think there's some underlying uncertainty from my end of being like, who am I? Like, who am I to start posting content around lead generation about a topic that I'm just learning right now? But if you just document your journey and you just share the learnings that you're finding, you're going to find that other people just want to learn from you as well, because you're literally doing the exact same thing. So all that to say is like, just put yourself out there. Your friends might make fun of you. That's like part of the journey. And you'll realize that they weren't the real supporters in the first place, but you just got to keep on going, because as a byproduct of that, you'll have a lot of content for like people that are searching you, but also people will reach out to you because they're like, you're clearly a thought leader in this space. And I know that you know what you're talking about because I see this continual stack of evidence that you're posting online.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I'm sure that a lot of beginners, and I can also actually relate so much with what you just said, where you just don't want to show your face on camera. You don't want to record any YouTube videos. You don't want to post anything because you just feel like you're not the expert in the field. Whereas
imposter syndrome, I think, is a good word everybody feels.
Exactly.
You just got to rip the Band-Aid off and just put yourself out there, and then something will happen and one tweet will go viral and you're like, maybe I do know something about this thing after all. But that's just part of the game. That's just part of the game. Just yourself.
You're always going to get the haters, and honestly, just brush those off, because you could have haters on this one post, next post go viral, and all of a sudden everybody forgot about nobody even knows the hate that's going on behind the scenes. It's all in everybody's head. And I think that's a mindset shift that people just need to break out of, really.
Yeah. So to touch on something else, there's a bit of a growing narrative that cold email doesn't work. There's a lot of companies out there, a lot of business owners who just feel like cold email doesn't work, which is pretty ironic considering that there's so much social proof online of businesses that are actively getting a lot of results, making hundreds of thousands, millions through cold email. So Why do you think businesses are having such different experiences with cold email? And what do you have to say to people who sort of have this belief that cold email doesn't work?
If you're doing everything right with cold email, like in terms of like the technicals, the way that you're going about targeting with your lists, you're writing persuasive copy, you think you have message market fit, like there comes a point where it's like only reason that it wouldn't work is because you don't have an offer that's good for cold email. Meaning like maybe you're just trying to sell something that is too expensive and needs trust and you don't have an intro offer. I truly do believe that if somebody has a good offer, something that's lucrative that people actually want to hear about, and it's not completely outdated or saturated, there's no reason that cold email wouldn't work. You might have to send a little bit more volume than you would in certain like other industries. It definitely works. And really like the only time that it doesn't work for us is just because like the offer, product or service is just something that's not really trending. It's not in demand. There's not enough people that have a pain point for it, or it's an outdated solution that has gotten overtaken now by, AI or all these different tools and softwares that can just do a much better job with it. I truly do believe it works though if you have something that people want and something that's like, in demand.
It's when I hear that the typical flood of cold email is dead, I'm just like, that's a skill issue, dude. I'm like, to the point, there are some offers that you'll take to market that nobody wants because it's just not an attractive offer. And that's where you really have to like willing to be creative around how can I reposition this? How can I produce an introductory offer? How can I give some sort of like crazy, incredible value just to get them in the door so I can like get some feedback and testing on. But like, even if we have a bad offer, I'll just take you through like a quick process that we run here. It's like, we're going to go and we're going to test a few different copywriting frameworks out. We're then going to reframe it into being like a make more money offer. We're then going to go and try to lead with case studies to just be like, hey, are these case studies even hitting with any of these unique audiences here themselves? If that's not working, our last step is we're just going to reach out to our ICP and ask them, would you be open to a podcast similar like what we're doing here, or just like a white paper? And then you can just like poke and prod them of like, hey, I'm building out this white paper. Here are the questions that I have. And you get a better understanding of what that ICP is. And then that second call is you actually pitch them like a formal discovery on like how you can align your solutions. You can just run that exact same step ladder down. And then by the end of that, you'll figure out like, hey, this is exactly what my ICP is selling. And then you just take it right back up to the top. And then you can just start running volume to that exact ICP, selling this exact problem that the person was dealing with. And so you can just consistently iterate off of that. And so when I say it's a skill issue, it's just like, are you willing to be creative and are you willing to be determined enough to solve the problem itself?
Yeah, that's super, super valuable, because I think a lot of people will just like really quickly resort to the fact that cold email doesn't work. Whereas, as you said, there's so many creative things that you can do to sort of actually figure out firsthand what the actual pain point is, so you can then pitch the solution. And this sort of also brings me to my next question, which is, when you work with companies that have previously used cold email, or if you just speak with other agency owners, I guess now, to be a bit relevant, end of 2025, moving into 2026, what are the most typical mistakes that companies make when they're using cold email? Where do they usually go wrong?
Two huge things immediately catch my ear when you say that is, one, they're sending from their main domain, and then two, they're not testing enough. Like oftentimes we'll get on consulting calls with myself and Nick and the customer, and they're just like, we ran 2 campaigns. It's not working out. We sent 15,000 emails. And I'm like, how many ICPs did you test out? How many different copies did you write? How long did you let the campaigns run? And they're like, yeah, it was 2 campaigns. We tested out 2 different copies. And I'm like, whoa. When our customers get on board, we're testing out like 12 different angles per campaign. We're testing out like 3 to 5 different avatars. And so there's so many different split tests that we're trying to figure out. And of course, that's acquired knowledge through like trial and effort. But like, if you're just willing to actually like do the technical infrastructure right, I'm sorry we keep coming back to that, but it's like a cornerstone of being successful. And then second, of just like being willing to test and iterate. It's just like A/B scientific marketing at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like typically, like when people do say that to us on sales calls, we always do try to just like kind of pry into like, why didn't it work in the past? And like it could be for a number of different reasons, like the 2 that Troy had just mentioned. But like when we do peel back the onion and we kind of like look at what's going on, it's like, well, we could take a look at their website, and if we're confused on what they actually do from looking at their website, like there's other prospects are going to encounter that same thing. The amount of volume and testing, like Troy had mentioned, like people will tell us like, well, we've tested everything. We ran a couple of campaigns where we reached 40 people doing this, and then we reached another 100 people, trying to pitch this offer or service. And this one was another 50 emails. And then you look at that and it's like less than 200 emails across all of their different tests that they had done, when it's like, they probably just don't understand that you do need to, only 3% of your market is typically going to be wanting to buy at any given time. And if you're only reaching out to 200 people, at best case scenario, you might get 6, bites out of that. And that's if you're doing things right. But then we also might look at like their emails themselves, and it's like they're writing a novel. And so anybody who gets 100 emails a day, like I know for myself, if I see a novel and it's from somebody that I don't know, I'm going to go ahead and trash it and not read the whole thing. And then there's also the people that just think that they are doing things the right way. And they might be emailing, the owner of an auto body shop trying to sell them a gym, a gym management software of some sort. Like they're just completely going based off what they think to be the right strategy. And that might just be bad list building, could be bad copywriting. There's so many different reasons that it could quickly go wrong, but pretty easy to spot those at a quick glance.
And you just got to keep it super simple too. Like when you're testing out an offer initially in the market itself and you don't know if it's going to work, just like plainly state, if we could offer just like we did with X or Y customer, would that be interesting? Or if we could offer by doing unique mechanism, would that be interesting? And if you just like spread that out across like 7 to 10 different audiences really quickly, you're gonna get some good feedback on like what's working and what's not.
Yeah, once again, super valuable, because a couple of these mistakes seem super obvious to people who are like actually running cold email campaigns like you guys. And there's like so much information out there where like, people are, even like you guys, I mean, because I follow you on social media, so I know that you also post about this all the time, and then you still like talk to people and they just make the most basic mistakes, which is, for example, as you mentioned, like sending from your primary domain and writing a novel and just not respecting people's time. So I guess one more thing, which you also mentioned, you talked a bit about AI. You talked about ChatGPT, talked about Claude. AI is obviously becoming much more present in cold email right now. So from your experience, how has AI impacted the industry?
So I quickly want to type on the previous note that you mentioned there. When it comes to like identifying those issues and stuff like that, we just do it every single day. So we exist at like the nth degree of this thing, and like it fully encompasses Nick and I's life. Fortunate as unfortunate that it may be. And so it's just like one of those things, like our bookkeeper reached out to it, or excuse me, our accountant reached out to us the other day. They're like, did you guys send out your 1099s yet? And I'm like, what's a 1099? Right. And so it's just like, because they do that thing every day and I don't do that thing every day. And so, but there's a ton of resources that exist out there. And so if anybody's made it this far in the podcast and this has been helpful to you, you can contact me at Troy at Buzzlead.io, and I'll shoot you over our masterclass. It's 240 pages and it'll get you up to speed on everything that we did here. And I'll make it entirely free, typically $97. That said, when it comes to like AI, we're incorporating this across our entire journey now because it's such like a force multiplier. And so we love like our Claude bot. I don't know if I should say that on here, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's like, we love our Claude bot because it's like pretty much gotten Nick entirely out of the infrastructure setup and be able to like consistently manage that thing on itself. And then we're able to utilize it for data scraping. We're utilizing it for deep research on individual customers, identify a trigger event that might go on within their business that typically would take a sales rep 15 to 30 minutes to maybe find one. And then they have to like go and write the message there itself. Like we're able to do this at thousands of contacts within a few clicks and then just iterate really quickly on top of that. And then we have MCPs that we can tie into to view the data and stuff like that. But Nick can give some pretty good insights into how they're utilizing that for the list building side of things. But we love it for copywriting, positioning, reviewing our campaign strategies, and then informing replies that are based off of like the context of the conversation, as well as like other research that we've done previously.
Yeah, and with AI, it's not just like a magic wand that you could just swing and it just will go and do all the work for you, but it allows you to amplify everything that you're doing and almost put it on steroids if you have all of your little processes dialed in. And to dive into that from, let's say, a list building perspective, like we're not having AI just completely go out and build a list for us, but we are having AI essentially help us with like figuring out exactly what we want to do for targeting, like knowing exactly what job titles that might differ between two different companies in the same organization. And they might just have people that wear multiple hats that have a different job title. Like we could have AI basically help us with like the targeting from, industries, qualifying companies. Like if we want to just make sure that these companies are actually a fit based off the product or service that we're selling. And what's becoming really exciting is just with how big API usage has been and all these different things like Claude Code, is if we have SOPs and processes dialed in and those are documented somewhere and you have API keys, these tools could all of a sudden start connecting to each other. And rather than you having to like do everything manually in all these different places and then try to figure out how to merge them all together, if you have these SOPs, it's almost like little agents that you can build. And it's like team members that could basically be working with each other and taking care of all these tasks in the background, like without a person actually having to do it. And you could stack up all these different tasks together. And so we're doing this from a list building perspective. We're doing it on the copywriting side, on the research side for the companies that we're reaching out to and the prospects. And we're able to pretty much just task stack all these different AI tools and agents. And it's pretty cool because I see a world where eventually, because we have all this knowledge of 4 years documented into all these little processes, and we've thoughtfully pieced all these things together, I see a world where you could click a button and all of the manual work in regards to like creating a system for a client, doing their targeting, their list building, their scraping, the research, the copywriting, even the objection handling and all the back and forth and scheduling the meeting, all that could be done through AI in theory. And so that's where I think we're going to probably start seeing the market head. However, if you don't have all the foundational pieces set up correctly in SOPs and you just expect AI to just go and spin up something together, it's going to give you a whole bunch of garbage and it's going to manipulate the data and it's not going to do what you intended to do.
Garbage in and garbage out at the end of the day. And so when I say that the barrier entry has gotten higher, it's just like that exact thing. Like we wouldn't have figured that out starting out of the gate of how to put all these pieces together. And that's where we're able to just like have a competitive advantage now. It's where you can move a lot faster on these sort of things. So I want to discourage people there from starting an agency because I think it's one of the best financial vehicles that you can build to help escape the rat race and build your own thing. And to Nick's point, and making a call back from earlier, is once these agencies are really just AI driven, your gross margins are going to be incredible. And then your net margins are going to be too, because like you're going to have very few employees that need to manage the system. And that becomes a really attractive asset to be either acquired or just enjoy that cash flow passively.
Yeah. And it removes a lot of human error too. If you set things up correctly, like it really removes that human error. It removes a lot of those labor costs that you would pay with multiple employees. And then it also gives you the ability to really like scale up as far as you want to go. Like you don't have to like have as many bodies that are managing all these different components. And when you look at a service-based business, like if typically, or at least historically, if you remove the founder, a lot of times the business, it'll crash. And that's why they never get valued high. And if you're looking to sell your business, you don't really get nearly as much as you would as if you had a SaaS or a software. And so what we find really interesting about this agentic movement that's going on and just like the ability to like use AI for marketing and campaign management, I think it removes the founders from being, kind of like the bottleneck of the business. And you just become a lot lucrative because if me or Troy go out of the country or if we're not there, like the business will keep on running and the agents will still be running on the background if you set it all up correctly. So it's super exciting. I think we're still very early on with AI. And so I think even if people are just getting started, like I think they have plenty of time to master AI before, everybody knows how to use it, but definitely
it's definitely on an exponential curve right now. And as we were talking about last night, we were like, are college kids and high school kids learning how to do this stuff? Because like, if they're not, it's going to be like pretty scary. But those ones that are really using like figuring out how to do it at like a young age, like they're going to be absolute killers. And like, I'm going to be terrified to compete against them because they're going to be thinking of use cases that I haven't even like thought of. And so that's where it'll be like really awesome. And so it just makes it so the AI, when it comes to like building an agency, is like, right, we can do it across our entire process now. And it's going to consistently iterate. And we're probably going to be able to operationalize the entire thing. And your price point is like, you're able to charge 100x more for it. But now, to Nick's point, you remove the bottleneck and you can still have just a few really key A players, as opposed to just having an army of B players that you're having to pay. And it's just a linear curve, or just a linear line. So it's a lot more attractive. It's a lot more fun because you get to deal with like really competent people that know how to do really cool shit.
And do you think, though, that we've reached the point where you can actually completely rely on AI? Like, are there any parts of your process that you've completely delegated to AI, or do you still feel that you're sort of monitoring it and you're the one who's going to have to sort of direct it, tell it what to do, but it can just sort of help you make certain processes more efficient?
Give me 9 months. Give me 9 runs. Not right now. The short answer to the question, but it's like, it's pretty cool. But there's still a few things where it's like, if you're not telling your prompts or specifically your agents to go and self-evaluate and score itself until it's like 90% or higher and like grade itself and like identify its flaws and stuff like that, when it's giving you like its outputs, you're gonna be in pretty bad shape. So like anytime you're using with an agent, tell it to do that. And then ask it any questions before you have executing a task. You do those two things really well. And usually the outputs are pretty good, to Nick's point around like garbage in, garbage out. And so I would love that in 9 months, but for the time being, we're going to be chained to the desk for a little bit.
Yeah. Believe me, we're both like visioning that, dreaming about it, and we think that that's going to come, but we're totally scared to just click a button and trust that the robots are going to do what we would do.
We've accidentally spent thousands of dollars by running agents, and then I'm at the gym and I get a ping from our Capital One of just like expense, and I'm like, what is going on? I'm calling Nick. I'm like, answer the phone, shut it down.
Yeah, and you could just be completely blind as to what's going on and think that it's running properly, and then notice that there's a huge fire that has already got half the woods, lit on fire. So it's coming, but definitely going to take some time. But I totally see a world where a year from now, like 95% of what we do is automated. But you need that human aspect. And you definitely need that feedback loop where AI can actually monitor what it's doing and figure out an accuracy score if it's actually giving, valid, good results. And there's ways to kind of fine tune that automatically, which we're getting to. But yeah.
And so to the point about the black box, which is a great point. So I was talking with Mitch Keller, who should also have a podcast. He's awesome, man. Super smart. He was like, you don't want to outsource all your thinking to AI as a black box. Like there should still be some continual engagement there throughout that process. And I think that'll be the evolution. It's just like, it's more like checkpoints and guardrails that you're putting into place to ensure that like goes and delivers on like what's intended there, because you don't want to entirely outsource that activity. And that's where I think a lot of these softwares that are coming up that the one that comes to mind is like tool like a Lavender, for example. Where they essentially, it's just like you put in your lead list, it'll write the scripts, it'll send the emails. You just never figured out, you never learned anything throughout the entire process. So when it comes to scaling it, you don't know how, because you didn't have the insight along the way. And so that's where I think those tools are great to get started with, but they're going to be really struggle to scale. And that's where you're going to be kind of like stuck in the rock and hard place.
First of all, I'm going to have you guys back on in 9 months where you can tell me if you've completely, outsourced the entire thing.
I look forward to it.
Delegated it to AI. But second, I have like so many questions regarding this. So I'm going to try and filter it down to like a couple of sort of key questions and the key confirmations that I want to make for all the viewers as well. So first of all, I'm guessing then from what you said is always make sure you have the fundamental knowledge before you start relying on the AI tools or start using them, because you obviously want to make sure that you're not giving it garbage. And in order to not give it garbage, you just need to make sure that you actually know what you're doing and what you need the AI tool to do for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to give it the knowledge, like a huge knowledge base. Whenever you're building a new project, and when our customers come on board, we tell them every single time, like the amount of information that you supply us in the onboarding form is going to be a direct correlation with client success. And so like we harp on that a ton, and it's because we're going to feed all that information into these AI agents to go and do these crazy workflows. But if you don't tell us enough, we have to fill the gaps, and we're not entirely right every single time. Like we're not perfect, right?
Yeah. And I just look at it as kind of like dumbing down every single process of what you do. Like something may seem like common knowledge to you, but to somebody else, they don't have that common knowledge or context. And so if it's even something as simple as just like, if I'm responding to my employee, this is how I would kind of structure it, or this is like what I would typically like say. Like you need to give it guardrails on almost like everything. Or if I am plugging in job titles, I make sure to exclude these things. And it's like all those little nuanced pieces are very, very important. Otherwise, it's not going to have that process of, I guess, like checks and balances and making sure that what you're trying to get out of it is what you're actually getting. And so it's just dumb down every little process, create SOPs, and then those things can start stacking up over time. And it's something that we didn't do when we had first gotten started. We didn't do a good job of like SOPs. And so that's huge. The more SOPs you have, the less other people you need to be doing that work, because you could essentially have an AI agent, help and take care of that task a lot quicker too and cheaper.
One more question on the AI topic before we sort of wrap this up as well. If we could give the viewers like a couple of the tools that you use the most, couple of the AI tools, software that you use the most across maybe targeting, copywriting, even for infrastructure, what are the couple of AI tools that people need to be using or that they can benefit the most from?
We're a big Claude heavy shop. And so anytime a customer gets onboarded, we just build out a huge knowledge base and project of like everything that we know about them. So anytime it comes to like building out go-to-market strategies, we have skills in our Claude that we can just like quickly, hey, trigger this skill, and it'll ask for a few additional inputs and questions, and it'll like output you a really good go-to-market strategy. And then you can take that, you pass that over to the list building team, and they'll like build out some absolute magic. When it comes to like actually like building out the content and stuff like that, we use 120 OSS, which is a GPT model. We just like that for synthesizing the research, and then HiQ 4.5, which is a Claude model for doing the writing. And then, as I mentioned, we're a Claude shop. So we just have a bunch of our MCPs, which are model context protocols, that allow us to just like read into a bunch of different tools to see like what's going on with them, so we can see the data and stuff like that. But we just really like where Claude is going with their entire vision. And I think we're going to see the continual rise of that within at least our business. Nick, what are you doing on the list building side of things in infra?
I'd say Claude by far, I think, is the most powerful tool that we're realizing now, and we're liking it more and more that we actually use it. I mean, from a list building perspective, I don't know. It's like Clay is kind of like an all-in-one tool that I think any lead generation company, there's a lot of like little AI tools, but yeah, I mean, there's like a ton of different list building tools out there, but some of the newer ones, Trigify, it's not necessarily new, but that's one that I think is important for people to at least look at or know how to follow similar processes where you're finding intent social signals. Another tool that's really awesome is AI Arc, which is basically the replacement for Apollo, where you can get really cheap data that has larger reach. It has AI components into it, so you could essentially build lookalike lists and do the whole aspect of list building directly within the platform. But I'd say if you're able to combine those two things, or those three tools and Claude Code, you could create a lot of powerful workflows despite having a Clay plan or not.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. So one thing I want to do before we wrap this up is I want to sort of put everything that we've talked about together into one, maybe two clear takeaways for everyone watching moving into 2026. I know it's a lot to sort of put into one takeaway, but if someone watching this video runs a cold email agency, they're running a B2B company, they're using cold email, what is one thing or two things they absolutely need to be doing in 2026 if they want to be able to keep up with how the industry is evolving?
Cold email is simple, but people like to make it hard. And if you can focus on the basics of having a really good infrastructure, pulling a relevant lead list of people that want to hear from you, having a product that people actually want to buy, and then writing persuasive copy. If you could do those four things at the very basics, you're going to be successful for the rest of cold email time. The other tools like AI and Clay and the other things that we throw out here, those are just amplifiers. But if you can focus on those four things, you'll scale incredibly well and incredibly fast.
I think that's well said. Honestly, just need to understand the basics very well, not get too caught up in what you're seeing on social media online, but find a couple of good accounts that you know are trustworthy from people that you trust. But there are a couple of like really awesome accounts there that really showcase how you can utilize some of the best tools. Mitchell Keller is one guy that has inspired us a whole lot, and he posts a lot of really good content that we absorb. But I think if you could understand the basics of building a good list, spending more time than you think you need to, I guess like your messaging frameworks, and you learn how to split test. Like I think you need to learn to have patience, split test, send enough volume, and make sure that what you're split testing is good quality data that you could actually like make a good valid decision on. Because you could split test all you want, but if the sample sets and those components are not good and you didn't spend your time building those good lists, then that data doesn't really tell you anything. So just spend more time on the basics and then test. All
right, perfect. I think that sums up everything perfectly, because I think that there's so much information out there that people need to filter through. And it can become quite stressful when you don't really know what you're doing. So just stick to the basics, make sure you know the fundamentals, and then you're going to be good. So Nick, Troy, this has been super, super valuable. I know it's been really valuable for me, let alone I'm sure for everyone else watching as well. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share everything. I know everyone watching is walking away with a much clearer picture of what has happened and what is going to happen with cold emails. So for anyone who's watching, maybe wants to learn more about Buzzlead or get in touch with you guys, where is the best place that people can find both of you?
Yeah, you can find us at buzzlead.io, and I'm at Troy Aitken underscores, AITKEN underscores on Twitter, as well as YouTube. And my offer's open for anyone that wants a masterclass. You can email me at troy@buzzlead.io, and I'll get you that over for free.
Yeah, and just for myself, on Twitter, you could find me at Nick Konsta. On LinkedIn, it's Nick Konstantinidis. But if you go to our website, buzzlead.io, we'll have our social media channels all branched out there, a lot of blogs, and a whole bunch of stuff that you can link out to and see all of our content on socials.
All right, perfect. And I'm going to link all of these links into the description below as well. So if anyone watching, it's going to be right underneath the video. So for everyone watching, thank you for sticking around, and we'll see you in the next episode.